Fade to Gray Network.
We invite people
of all backgrounds
to share their stories
through nuanced conversations
and forward thinking
and not taking ourselves too seriously.
Everyone's story matters.
Every voice is important.
Life is polarizing,
but not everything is black and white.
Come join us
as we fade to gray.
Welcome to another live episode of the Big Tent Revival with Fade to Gray. And today it is my pleasure to bring on Subculture Incorporated. If you've listened to Fade to Gray podcast, you may have heard an interview with Robert we put out just recently on his story and a lot of the work that they're doing with Subculture Incorporated. And it is an absolute pleasure to have them on today. So with no further ado, let me introduce Robert Munson and Tamice. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Robert is muted. It's like he's never done this before.
First time.
No, thanks.
Pretty good.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. I am excited to be here. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, let's see your face.
Yeah, we can't even see you. He's trying to show us his guns.
Don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I have been working out in quarantine, so yeah, I have been, doing what I need to do. Trying to show us your lats. Yeah, I do what I can do. I'm single too, so I'm out here
throwing it out there.
There we go.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. So show it off. I mean, come on now. We're on Facebook Live.
Oh my gosh.
Like this is your opportunity, my friend.
Oh my God. So just a little bit about us. Tamice runs Subculture, and she's my boss with Subculture. And
am I?
So just give us a little bit about Subculture, and then we'll jump into today's topic, Tamice.
Sure. Yeah, I started Subculture to advocate for Black students. I did a lot of campus ministry and realized that most of the time campus ministries, the help that they were offering was very theoretical and abstract. And the students that I was dealing with, however, were dealing with issues that were real tangible and had real needs. And so I thought, what would it look like for us to create something that came alongside people who were trying to reach Black students that actually put some actual bread in their hands. And so Subculture was created just out of being annoyed about the fact that I couldn't actually tangibly show students that they were loved and that they had dignity and deserve to finish school. So what we do is basically help students when they face a crisis that would cause them to have to leave college. And we do that mainly by creating content and doing consulting work. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And we also give out.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We give out scholarships and so content, scholarships, you name it. We do a lot of things with Subculture. So that's the organization we help run. And then were you about to say something, Seth?
Yeah, I'm curious though, because for a lot of people, they might not know the need. So I'm assuming you guys will talk about that, but I really want to dive into that a little bit, what the need is to where this has risen to the level of doing something like this. I think it's absolutely amazing, but a lot of people might not know,
Yeah, I think. You want to jump in, Rob?
Yeah, go ahead.
Our tagline is that we clear a path, right? And I think what I was dealing with in my own life and in the lives of the students that I was working with was that they had a lot of barriers, not just to graduating, but to faith. And what Subculture is trying to do is decolonize everything that we do, from the way that we give scholarships to the way that we do crisis relief to the way that we talk about faith and talk about scripture, talk about God. And so we have kind of 4 barriers that we've identified that are cultural barriers, which have to do with just whiteness and supremacy that is the foundation of our country. We have spiritual barriers that students face. Say what? Stop. We have spiritual barriers that I think are unique in the sense that they're connected to some of that white supremacy as well, right? So we have to debunk this idea of a white conservative Republican Jesus, right? And so on the other end of that, the more practical
there's
arena.
no white Jesus.
I'm feeling
Oh, surprise.
all of a sudden. I just realized
Are you feeling attacked?
I'm a little outnumbered.
Surprise!
And this doesn't happen that often.
You guys need a break though, because that's usually it's hard for a lot of people to hear. So I don't know if you need a break. Or
No.
you wanna stop the line?
We may want to unpack that a little bit.
at me.
Because
Let's go.
obviously, that's a tagline that I use quite a bit. But
yeah.
let's
And
camp
we'll
out there for a minute,
unpack
because
that. We'll unpack that the white Jesus part in the actual, like, in the content of what we're going to talk about. Actually,
okay,
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good question. I feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd
So
love
you're
to
calling
talk
all
about
white people
Jesus.
racist? Is that what you guys are
Oh
doing
my
right now?
gosh, trolling from the beginning.
Oh my gosh.
Go ahead, Tamice.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like thrown off now because I'm really ready to talk about white Jesus and how he tried to kill me. But
No.
I think like
Jesus was white. What are we talking about?
Oh my god.
this might have to turn into like a counseling session.
So keep going. So people who might be listening right now, it's kind of maybe like offensive, like, oh, here we go, more Democratic speak, because a lot of times this can be, ends up in political parties. It ends up being triggering for people that like don't consider themselves privileged, worked hard for everything they had, and now they're being called privileged. So even that conversation, sometimes like people automatically start tuning out.
Yeah. So what I want to say here, so let's sketch this out and clean it in the sense of, let's get through subculture's mission, and then that will lead beautifully into the topic of what we are actually talking about. And hopefully walking away from this conversation, hopefully we will give people more food for thought, because you're right. Often these kind of topics polarize people to think, I can check out from this, and I have the luxury of not talking about this because faith, race, Christianity, politics are things that I have the luxury from checking out, right? And so hopefully stick with it, stay with it. Stay with it. But so give us a bit more about subculture's mission and the need there. Like even the financial barriers too. Yeah,
so it's like most students face about $10,000 of debt after financial aid in school. So if they work full time, let's just say they work full time and they go to school full time, that still only makes up about $7,000 for them for the year. So they're already lacking about $3,500, give or take, and that's without a significant crisis that might happen to them while they're in school. And so we're just trying to raise funding to help students who face crisis, because they can't like call a rich uncle. Most of the time my students were like being invited to these really expensive conferences and they couldn't pay rent. And it like bothered me so much, because I didn't have the ability to step into that, but I had the ability to bring them to these conferences that would continue to like, I don't know, indoctrinate them to a Jesus that didn't have actual tangible help for them. And so when I moved from Atlanta, I just decided that I didn't see something quite like what was bothering me. And so I decided to just make it. And so that's what we do. And we partner with organizations, ministries, universities, all of that. We just want Black students to thrive, and we're either trying to clear barriers for them or clear barriers that people have to reaching them. And so that's what we're after. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And then we noticed, for example, we had a scholarship request last week for $100. And what was heartbreaking about that is $100 would make or break a Black student's whole year. And we noticed for white students when we were doing college, now, yes, these are generalities, so don't come for us. Like, I was a broke white student. Yes, we know that because we've done a lot of campus ministry. So we're not dumb. So we noticed $100 though, by and large though, $100 would make or break a Black student's whole career in college. And so we found, though, that $100 was a significant barrier to our Black students understanding who God was, though, in a way that wasn't on the same level of our white students. And so hence subculture.
Pretty much.
Yeah. and then so go ahead, Omar, what were you going to say?
No. I was saying that's an awesome way to, the saying is, see the need and fill it. And I feel kind of like that's what Tamice has done, and Robert coming alongside, helping bring content, and the conversation and bringing awareness is awesome. And I like your posture already, Robert, from the beginning, just kind of like understanding that there's going to be people, whether justified or not, that's not the point, but there's going to be people who are going to have an emotional reaction to these type of conversations, and to get past that barrier to where everybody can say, like, no matter how you feel about it, there's still a need here. This is still happening. It's like we can't be blind. And once you hear the conversation, or once it's up to you then as a responsibility, myself included, anybody, like, okay, well, what can we tangibly do? And it's one of those things, like, denial is the worst thing that somebody can do in a privileged position.
Precisely.
To try to say that it's not there. You're not going to lose anything by admitting that maybe you've had privilege in your life. So precisely, which leads us then to the topic today. Like, this is a good, man, we just weaving this in. So Jesus is at work, brother.
Come on, somebody. So the topic, when Chris first presented it to me, he said, hey, we're doing this thing called Big Tent Revival. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. And I was like, where y'all coming from? And and he shared some of the things under this big tent. And I thought it was really interesting. Obviously, one, because I grew up as an atheist, and y'all were doing this kind of play on words with Big Tent Revival. And I thought that was very interesting to me. And the thing that I wanted to bring to the table is this notion of race and religion and Christianity and history. And I wanted to bring all of those to the table and have a discussion. And these things don't have to be exhaustive. And just have a discussion, just an open, honest discussion. Because what I feel, honestly, even when you think of big tent revivals, part of what pains me is when I see a lot of people deconstructing or shying away from their notion of Christianity or being hurt from Christianity. If we're honest, most, if you could dig in, what they're really hurt by is white Christianity, if we're honest. And so often when people say they're deconstructing or I'm hurt by the church, if I will ask people, describe to me what you're hurt by. As they begin to say all the things they're hurt by, I usually am saying, like, a lot of that are issues of white supremacy. And they don't have to be, they can be, they don't have to synonymously be one and the same with Christianity. And what I want to bring to the table is there is a tradition, there are rich traditions outside of white conservative Christianity that many they're not even aware of. And so just mentioning Christianity can be triggering for some, even the notion of how subculture was formed. People aren't even aware that there are traditions that are based in other, in Christianity, based on other things and historical things outside of other ethnic groups outside of Christianity. Go ahead, Seth. What were you going to say?
As the only white person in the room.
Well, I mean, I'm halfway there.
Okay. You owned
Some
it.
people may argue more.
You
Some
owned
people
it.
may argue more.
What is white Christianity?
Yeah.
And I know I actually know the difference, and but I'm going to ask that question. What is? I mean,
So I'm going to take it I'm going to answer it in a different way than what people would answer it. So I will root this conversation in Black Christianity first, rather than root it in white Christianity. So
that's the first part.
Yeah. So
okay.
Go ahead and decenter that.
Yeah. So I will decenter white Christianity and center Black Christianity. So
it's good.
So when I look at how the traditions of how, for lack of a better term, Black theology has formed within America, there have been this rich tradition of Black men and women who have found hope in Holy Spirit as liberator. They found these rich traditions in identifying with the Hebraic people, to the point where Frederick Douglass, when you read his scathing critiques of white Christians, his presumption were that they're actually white Christians were not Christians at all. So how he would frame that question, were when he looked out at Christianity, his presumption was seemingly white Christians are not Christians. Mm-hmm. Because when you read his critiques, were any person that could enslave another human being and then go into the house of God and sing and clap and dance, well, that person does not know God.
So hearing you talk, Robert, obviously, there's my obviously again, but it is obvious the answer to this if you've heard the earlier episode. But I mean, you speaking like this, I mean, clearly you have to be going to an all-Black church then, right now. I mean, like with that, with that type of logic and thinking, like when you wouldn't be caught dead being attending an all-white church.
Because
Black churches can be steeped in whiteness too.
Yes, that's the other thing. One, because the reason why I'm rooting this conversation outside of what has become synonymous with Christianity is because there seems to be these notions that we have accepted as fact, right? Like, and merely calling attention to it almost is jarring, right? and everyone's like, whoa, like I haven't even thought of that. And I'm like, okay, it's okay to examine things, like why we believe what we believe is okay, right? Like, so no, I actually go to a profoundly multiracial church. It's actually more white than anything. It's actually a pretty largely white church.
So when you speak from this, it's not like you're speaking at a place of like
I don't have a Wakandan church, if that's lest anyone fear. That might be lit though. So I guess what I want to say is there is a testimony of within our nation of an enduring gospel witness of people who, under intense pressure, who adopted a religion that did not find its origins in Europe, because that's also a lazy narrative, and they found immense rest, immense peace, and immense endurance in the Bible, to the point where they looked at their captors and said that they don't know the Bible, right? And so I would say that Christianity is not the white man's religion. It finds It's richness in people who are minorities and oppressed people. And I think that's why if you look at Black people and people who are oppressed, you will find some of the richest preaching and teaching. Go ahead, Tamice. You look like you were going to say something.
No, I have nothing to say. That was great.
Yeah.
I looked like I was tweaking, but I was trying to find my Frederick Douglass, the narrative, to see if I could find that quote, but I don't know where it is. So.
I think that what you just said was poetry. It was spoken word beautiful.
Yeah, because I think often when we come at Christianity in America, we come at it through the white lens. But I think a greater question to look at then is what other people group or what time in history would captives take on a religion to the point of so identifying with it that they would take it, be subsumed in it, and so identify with it that they would say, oh, this is so rich that y'all aren't saved. Like, this is so rich, and these texts are so true, and we find such rich traditions. Y'all definitely aren't following these tenets, right? And then there's this lasting legacy. Throughout the ages, Black people have stayed true to the traditions of the text. Now, not saying Black people have not been perfect. So that's to your point, Omar. That's what I'm saying. I haven't been like, I'm only with Black people to the exclusion of all the other races. That's also, I want to give that disclaimer.
So one of the people currently in this webinar has a question, and it kind of flows right along with this. And I want to ask, I'm just going to read it because I think it applies. But I may have misheard the explanation, but are you saying white Christianity lacks real Christians because they have blind spots like slavery, which is obvious in 2020, but maybe not in the 1800s? Wouldn't all races have some type of blind spot to sin while still being Christian?
I mean, I know Rob probably has a more eloquent answer, but to me,
no.
I would say that the question, while I understand where it's coming from, it's kind of bothersome in the sense that it's not so much that white Christianity has blind spots; it has disagreement. So it's completely a different thing. Like, it's not so much that in the 1800s there was this blind spot to slavery. It's the fact that there was this severe disagreement with God. Like, to hate something that God loves, period, is a disagreement from the get-go. And so I think the part of the worldview of being a Christian is that we found ourselves in some sort of agreement with God, right? And so to me, that's where white Christianity begins to go off the road, is the fact that there is this insidious disagreement with God about those who are made in God's image. The other thing I would say about the 1800s, when Europeans began to take over the narrative, is the fact that they forgot they were the other, right? Like, they aren't Jews, they're Gentiles. And I think understanding that you were the other in this whole text, the text ain't talking about you, it's talking about them. And so to understand that I'm other and I'm being brought into this story, that in and of itself creates a level of humility that would have probably checked white Christianity if other people had power at that time. Though that's my thought.
Yeah, and yes.
That's good.
It's eloquently said, because I think that is where things massively went off the road. And you see, even before America's inception, European Christianity went off. And this, please hear me, this is not a scathing critique of white people at its core. I love me some.
Friends are white.
Yeah, I love me some white people. So if the thing you're taking away is like, they brought some Black people to hate on white people, please, woosah. I love white people. The reason why this is important is merely because of this big tent revival, because a lot of people leave Christianity because they feel that the questions they have, the rubs within themselves are at odds with Christianity. And my point is, it doesn't have to be. Right. And so when European Christianity started to go off the rails and they started to colonize everything, is with this othering piece. When you understand that Jesus himself probably had more in common with a Mexican immigrant, you will profoundly understand the gospel in ways that, I mean, light bulbs will go on in your head. You will understand Jesus, who his whole life, Jewish people by the time of Jesus, all had been in slavery and bondage their whole life. So Jesus actually probably had more in common with indigenous people and with chattel slaves than with the average white European person. So if you know that, you will read the Bible in such different ways. Does that make sense? To how your posture and humility, you will teach the Bible differently. It will make chattel slavery impossible. It will actually make it impossible. So part of my point in putting this on the table is the strain of Christianity we made here in America is impossible when you read the text in certain ways. And therefore, all of the atrocities that we've done here to the LGBT community, the atrocities we did to indigenous people, and making people feel like they had to choose between their faith and conversion therapy with LGBTQ community. Those things are atrocities to me. And it's like, do I have to be gay or choose Christianity? That's a false choice. And my point and why I have passion is like, no, that's because of a strain of Christianity that was created. And if you understand the Savior that you're following, and if you understand the people group that he came from in historical context, then it all makes sense. And so I'm saying in who I am, my ethnic identity, and what I bring to my Christianity, and if you guys will allow Black people humbly to come and present history in the Bible to you in ways humbly, we can bring something enlightening to the text. That's what I would say to Christianity.
Wow. I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I don't know what it feels like out there in Facebook Live world, but like the tone, I think for me is just changed. You like hearing the way you put that, because I had a question and I'm still going to ask it, but I feel like I already know the answer after the way you explained the heart behind what you guys are doing there and comparing Jesus to a Mexican immigrant. I felt like I've been pretty open-minded and pretty liberal in my stance in Christianity, but I haven't really even looked at it that way, or the fact that Jesus literally has more in common with slavery or Black people or the Jews. He was a Jew. I don't know how that disconnect happens, but that leads into my question. I was going to ask, because we're talking deconstruction and how people are deconstructing away from what we're calling quote unquote. I liked when you called it like European Christianity, because it seems less threatening to to white people. But
because if we say white, it feels like attack like.
It does for some reason. It does. But
European is nicer. It's a euphemism.
Isn't it interesting how white people are a little sensitive in that regard?
Yeah, it's nice. It's Caucasus Mountains.
But so my question though, like with working with Black students who are deconstructing their faith, do you have many who are deconstructed from what you might consider Black Christianity, but the reason I would be hesitant to even ask that question after listening to your explanation is there such thing really as Black Christianity in America? If even as Tamice said earlier, even most of the Black churches are being influenced by the same Jesus. So even if people are deconstructing from Black church, are they deconstructing from Black church, or is it still, or what are they deconstructing from?
That's an interesting question. Go ahead, Tamice.
I was thinking about it, like in the sense of, I've actually never, Omar, like never heard anyone say Black Christianity. I do hear Black church. And so I think even within that statement of the Black church, there are very problematic things within the traditions within the Black church that I think are sort of, that younger people are sort of bucking against. But I think even within the Black church, there was a preservation, for the most part, there was a preservation of certain things that were true to Black identity. And so for me, that's the difference. Like, I don't really know what a Black Christianity would look like. But I do think there are definitely problematic things within the Black church, for sure.
Yeah, this is a very thoughtful question. I think there are things that I would say are contained within Black theology, and don't get thrown off by that. They're merely things that are emphasized within Black theology, that are merely things that traditional theology don't emphasize. In the same way that feminism, people give feminism a bad rap. But when you boil down feminism, feminism is actually helpful, because essentially feminists are like, hey, please don't treat us like trash. We're women. And feminism, that term, is an indictment against our culture. Feminism wouldn't have to exist if our culture wasn't trash. And so in like manner, Black theology would not have to exist if regular theology was not trash. So people they're like, Black theology? I just do regular theology. I'm like, no, regular theology is deficient. It's vitamin D deficient. So
Vitamin B.
Right. But I would say in like manner to what Tamice said, there are some very destructive things that we find in some black traditional churches that
Let's unpack that a little bit, because
sure.
I think most people who are listening probably grew up in white traditional churches, and so
y'all know I love my
some
people.
Common destructive things.
Sure. So a book that I recommend is by James Cone, who is the father of Black liberation theology. And the book is called My Soul Looks Back. It's very short. He delivers a scathing report to everybody. White America, Black America, Black churches. Everybody gets a piece. It's everyone's equal opportunity. Everybody can get it.
Even Korean Jesus?
Yeah, actually, Asia does get a little piece. Actually, everybody gets a little equal piece of the pie. I think, yeah, even Latin America, everybody gets a little piece. So,
all right.
So
equal opportunity.
If everyone in your life wants to get a little hurt feelings, My Soul Looks Back. It's a little $8.99 purchase. I probably bought like 10 of them for my friends, so you might not be able to find a lot of them. So, but I would say probably one thing that's picked up in a lot of churches that I hear most often is a lot of religious rules. So I think something that developed, especially after slavery, was the notion that good works could save you. So something that happened that even my father, who's not religious at all, was this notion that if you didn't smoke, you didn't slow dance, and you didn't drink, you didn't show your shoulders, you didn't like dance in any way, you could be saved. So which led to very religious, controlling, oppressive homes. And also in those same homes, homosexuality was a no. In those same homes, like a lot of abusive, like they would try and beat homosexuality out of you. And so it's a shame and an indictment on that form of Christianity. And so those traditions pass from generation to generation. And I know why they developed, but it doesn't make them okay.
I was going to say, when I hear you talking about that, I think, well, of course you're going to feel that way as a black man because you want to succeed in white America, and you already are behind the eight ball, as they say. So, like, of course, you don't want to be labeled a slut on top of that. Of course, you don't want to add to things that are going to get in your way because already the color of your skin is going to slow you down. So it makes sense that you would have more pressure. It's trash. Yeah. I'm not justifying, but it seems like it's product of the system for sure.
You're right. You're right. You're absolutely right.
I would also add, though, in terms of the Black church, just having worked with Black college students for so long, a lot of the things that were refreshing for them was the ability to ask questions. So a lot of times in the Black church, it was like, we don't question God. And I remember so many times I would do these like little things where I would just go out and say, like, if you could ask God anything, and the students would be like, you're not supposed to do that. We don't question God. And it's like, never even knowing that the Bible is actually filled with questions. Like, that's all people do in the Bible is question God. And like, so their ability to kind of enter in and kind of have a level of dignity and nuance to what they believe, I think is really important to them. And it wasn't really offered. There are some churches that are great at that. But for the most part, I think there was a disconnect generationally with students who had a little bit more curiosity and a little bit more exposure, obviously, than those who were older than them. And so when their questions, their genuine questions, were met with being shut down, I think it just created a sense in which they don't want anything to do with it and they'll go on their own search. The other thing that is common is the whole like belonging before you believe and not feeling like I can fully be myself, that everything is a show and like, the hypocrisy, I know what these deacons are doing back here, but then they're telling me I'm going to hell because I went to the club last night. Like literally that specific. And so I think for a lot of Black young people, it's this longing for authenticity, this longing for someone to admit that there is actually truth outside of the Bible, right? Like they have nuance and they have ideas. And oftentimes people don't affirm that, yes, this is true. And I mean, what I see with Jesus is like, the guy comes up and says, what do I have to do? And Jesus says, well, what does it say? What do you say? Like, what does the law say? How do you read it? And there's this affirmation that like, I have a brain and I can think and I can reason. And I think, for me, I feel like if the Black church doesn't begin to take that turn, then they're going to continue to just hemorrhage Black young people. And that bothers me. Obviously, that's why subculture exists, but it really bothers me.
It's true. And something else that I want to put on the table about faith and Christianity, especially among Black people, is that this notion of atheism being kind of a luxury of
I really meant it though.
Atheism is a luxury of privilege, right? And when I look at the faith of the marginalized and all that we have endured as a people, often, like Christianity and religion is seen as like an opiate of the people. And it's like, oh, you had to because like you needed to believe in something. And it's used as like this negative, scathing critique. But I want to flip it on its head and say, could we possibly look at the beauty of a people who clung to their ideals and their morals and their values, and in a faith that superseded what they were able to see in the natural, right? And that it was more than an opiate of the people, one, and also that it meant everything to them. they were able to rise above their socioeconomic standing. They were able to be delivered from chattel slavery. They were able to keep progressing through every epoch of time within America. They were able to be delivered from Jim Crow in a reign of terror in America, and to keep progressing and to ultimately full civil right freedoms. I always say it this way. I am the first person born in my family with full civil rights in completion.
Wow.
The first person.
Wow.
And I think it doesn't hit people. I am the fullness of my ancestors' dreams on American soil. And I think so often people look at Christianity, and I get it because I was an atheist, and I'm pretty critical. I don't know. I still am halfway atheistic and thinking. But
be careful. Be careful now.
I just be like, it depends on the day, the lunar cycle, what color I'm wearing. I don't know. But I think when you look at what continues to happen because of an enduring faith, when you look at the church, the Black church was the center of social change. I think it's also incredible. So I want to also put that on the table, that for many other ethnic groups, church and faith is something philosophical that they get to debate among themselves. But for the Black people, it is something that was essential for survival and thriving. And so it's also a beautiful story of redemption for Black people, that it's interwoven and interspersed with our thriving. We would not be having this conversation all together without the story of Christianity and the Black church at all. And I think that is beautiful. Even if you don't believe in Christianity, I think it's beautiful.
I can tell you that most white evangelicals do not think about that. That's not in their repertoire. I was raised kind of believing that, the Black church was kind of out of control, a lot of dancing, a lot of chanting, a lot of yelling, but like good old town. But it wasn't, but we don't, I don't know the history. I didn't grow up learning that. So it never really impacted the way that I evaluated my faith or viewed things moving forward. And kind of seeing it now, 30 years in, it's pretty eye-opening. I mean, just the fact that, I know this in my history because being a part of Assemblies of God for a decade, but the greatest move of God ever that happened in the United States, move of God in quotations, because his power had to do with Black people, but it was kind of like swept under the rug with the Azusa Street revival. That was all the Black church and Black ministers and white people coming alongside and helping what they were already doing, and throwing race aside and things great Pentecostal moves of God were happening at that time. But then we're like, oh yeah, they woke up one day like, oh yeah, that's right, we're different colored skin. You're supposed to be over there. What are you doing? And then
shout out to the Assembly of God.
but there's some rich history that doesn't really get talked about, and it's just like a footnote in the Assemblies of God history. It's
yes,
very much so.
I have many thoughts on it.
So, okay, can I ask some questions on just some logistics in regards to Southern Culture Incorporated?
No questions.
Where's the money coming from?
You tell me, bro.
So no, for real. Jesus. I heard that from Robert, and I was like, "This is amazing." And I'm sure there's grants. I'm sure there's ways of getting that. But do you have donors? Is there a fundraiser?
It's mainly donors, and but again, again, the whole idea of decentering whiteness in a way of wanting to say, like, there are brilliant people on my team who think and lead and who can write. And so let's generate revenue and advocate for people just as much as we ask for donation, because we don't want people to think I'm helping the little Black children make it through school. I mean, we'll take the donors, but we don't want it to be a sense in which the matriculation of our students is dependent on charity from white people, because most of the time white people are the ones who give to a nonprofit just because of traditions and things. But so I think for us, it's really important to do both and to generate revenue to advocate for these students using our own giftedness and not being pimped out by people who would use our giftedness to make their big organizations rich. Rather, we create our own stuff. We use the revenue from that stuff to pay it forward, right? To say we believe in your dignity and we want to see these students as agents of change, not charity cases. And so that's like super important to me. So yeah, we do have donors. We have a couple of like corporate grants and things like that. But yeah, I mean, we're open. Anybody's a millionaire. Robert wants benefits.
Hallelujah.
I mean, there's just a lot of money in white evangelicalism. If only there was like a way of funneling that in. However,
because we have, so we have donors, and then we also have these revenue generators where we wrote a book highlighting Black believers throughout history who have made notable contributions. We're also working, Tamice and I are co-authoring a book on the theological implications of hip hop.
Yeah, I'm interested in that one.
And the kids, we're doing we found like we have a bunch of millennial parents that are asking questions about their kids, and so we're actually doing children's books. So like I never thought we'd do a children's book, but we're working on that too. So yeah.
And so we just have a couple different ways, and then we have the podcast and stuff, and people support the podcast through Patreon and stuff. So a couple different ways we make money for the organization.
Yeah, merrily eating off these streams. For sure.
Well, we're about at the hour mark. So what we're going to do now is we're going to continue this conversation. Plus, there's a really great question we're going to ask from Chad. So to kind of wrap things up for the Facebook Live feed, what's the name of the podcast? Like, where can people access that? Because I even forget myself.
Yeah, so you can go to thehive.show.
Okay.
That's where all of our segments are located. But we have The Hive, which is kind of a amalgamation of different shows all in one. And then we have Where's the Lie, which is the one that we started with Robert, myself, and Tamara. That one's a little more spicy, a little more, it's for petty and pious people. We'll put it that way.
Okay. And this book, where can we find that?
Subcultureinc.org. If you go to our website, there's a tab that says, I think it says resources or publications or something like that, and you can get it there. Yeah.
And kind of continue this on. Chad,
we ready.
Chad, who's in this chat with us, asked this question.
Is that Chad Johnson or is that Chad
I don't know who it is. I think it's Chad Johnson, and he named himself Chad. He named himself Chad Showalter to, I'm assume, mock me in some way.
Let's bring him. We're in the question and answer time. Let's bring in our attendees into the
Chad,
conversation.
Are you okay if we bring you on?
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, that's Chad Johnson.
Yes, that is a very unique, obnoxious voice.
Your voice isn't obnoxious.
I appreciate that. First of all, I really enjoyed hearing you on the first episode, Robert, and then this whole thing as well. Thanks. I don't know, Seth. Did you want me to kind of like verbally say my question I had?
Go ahead, say it.
You gave a really.
Seth is not in control right now. I'm the captain. I just want to make that clear.
Okay, captain.
I'm the captain.
So basically, I mean, here's where I'm coming from. Obviously, I'm a straight white male, married with 2 kids, living the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Whoa, that's not that obvious. The white male part is obvious.
Just because your name is Chad, we're supposed to know all that?
Straight part's debatable.
Come on.
Well, there's also a dark skinned Chad Johnson as well. There's a lot more famous than me. But anyway,
fair enough.
I grew up in an area where it was only about 50% white. And now, as an adult, I live in an area that's like 90% white. So of course,
moving on up.
Yes.
Okay, come on.
So it's my thing that I'm seeing. My kids are 13 and 15 now, almost 13 and 15, both two girls, and they just have a lot different perspective because they've grown up in this culture. And we go to an evangelical church, and of course, because of the population, it's predominantly white. And I don't know. I feel like they're missing out on things I got to see as a child when it comes to, I'm 41 years old. So me and I lived in an all black neighborhood until I was 13. So me and my friends that I had growing up, our parents tried to teach us something different than what we did. You know what I mean? Our grandparents especially did, and we started to realize, wait a minute, my black brothers and sisters are not so bad. They're a lot of fun to hang out with. And that was kind of, so I had a lot of black friends growing up. My kids don't have that. So they don't get to go to their house and hear their parents say, when you go to the store, keep your hands out of your pocket. Those type of conversations. My friends taught me that when I was a kid. And my kids don't get that. And so now when they go to church as well, they don't hear anything about race. Like we tried to watch a documentary on Amazon Prime about racial history and Christianity. I don't know if you've seen it or not, but they were just like, it wasn't that they didn't care. I mean, they care, but they can't connect with it. Like they live in such a white world that they can't connect. And it bothers me deeply, but it's where I work and it's where I live, but I don't know how to teach that though.
So your question is like, how do you navigate these waters? Because you live in mostly white spaces.
Yeah, I mean, especially like, and the church, I feel like should be the first ones that speak up, like with the runner that got shot here last week or two. Well, I guess he was actually shot 2 months ago, but it took him that long to do something. But that whole situation, like that never gets brought up in a white church. And where do you
unless it's the white church that's raising support for the shooters.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Well, yeah. And then so on the way home, let's say this didn't happen now because we're all in quarantine, but what could have happened is, my kids hear me talk about that injustice, but then they go to church and they don't hear about those injustices. And so they'll hear me complain on the way home from time to time.
Yeah.
And then, I come across as the bad guy,
No.
About the church.
Right, we're going to meet you now, Chad. So we'll let him answer your question.
Yeah. So I have a few thoughts and then Tamice, jump in. Just to get into this time, I think it's a great question, Chad. First of all, Chad Showalter. I think first, I look at it, the responsibility is first on parents, then the church, then society. What would be great is in a perfect world if it was society, then the church, then parents. But our society is interesting, and our church is no comment. So no comment on the church. Jesus Christ is natural. But I would say you're doing a good job because it's my responsibility to teach my kids about the world that they are supposed to enter into. And so I think it's your responsibility to show your kids and tell them about the world they enter into. So you are the one. You're doing good. Show them movies and documentaries. I have a friend who, or we have a mutual friend, they would watch Mississippi Burning, which is like a very, very intense movie from back in the day. And they will watch it regularly.
Every February. But I think you, as a white man, you model to your white kids, oh no, this house, we're watching these movies. So you regularly, monthly, you watch the movies because you don't want to lay that responsibility on school or your white church. So you find out those movies that are racial because you have to combat your largely white society. So you kind of almost have to OD and go against the grain. So you go and watch the movies like 13th, or you watch
Malcolm X Mondays.
Yeah.
Malcolm X Mondays.
No, I think literally, because if you live in a largely white town, then I think it's your responsibility to go against the grain and kind of OD on it. So that's the thing that I would say. And then it would be great if your church spoke about those things. I have largely found that white churches.
Well, he goes to an AG church. They're not gonna. Yeah, that's a lost cause.
My AG church doesn't, and then my mixed church don't.
Sorry, I just wanted to throw a little,
Yeah, like my mixed church don't, and it's a lost cause. Like it's not gonna happen. But what I will say, your kids will appreciate that they knew, hey, my daddy did not play. I didn't get it out there, but when I tell you, my daddy for free time, movies, it wasn't just Lego movie. we were in learning mode. So what were you thinking?
How old are your kids, Chad?
They're almost 13 and 15.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
it's
I think, yeah. I mean, I would say first, my question was going to be like, you kind of talking about it on the way home, like you really having it solidified in yourself why you're pissed, like so that you're able to articulate it, and then helping to explain to them why it's a problem that their church is not talking about this. The other thing I would say that would make it easier is maybe just to have conversations. Like, I mean, you could show them the Ahmad videos. That's why I asked their age, and it's up to you. You're the parent. But like having a conversation about Ahmad, like show the video. What do you think? And where's that thought coming from? And why do you think you feel that way? And really beginning to like help them unearth some of their own implicit bias and then using that as a teaching moment. But I think it's great, like what you're doing. I mean, we definitely don't want to be minions of the like robotic people coming out of our churches. So I think for me, it's really important to like let people have the dignity of thinking for themselves and then having a conversation within that. So for me, I would just show them whatever you're, feeling free to show them, and then ask them their thoughts, just point blank, like don't jump in, just ask them their thoughts. And then begin to keep asking questions about where that's coming from. Cause I'm sure for you, your process was about asking yourself hard questions. And when the answers didn't make any sense, you let it go. And I think that's probably the same journey you can kind of lead them on. And you want them to do that like once they get out of your house and throughout the rest of life. So I would just start there. That would be my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, they find a lot. They're always interested in dad's history because they know that I've experienced things that they'll never probably experience, you know? So I use a lot of that as examples. I mean, I'm Seth makes fun of me for being an AG church. It was non-denominational. Then they joined the AG.
Listen to those justifications.
Thanks, Seth.
But
listen to it.
But I'm not your average. I mean, I let my kids, we watch Mississippi Burning, it's a great example. I mean, they hear dad listen to Kendrick Lamar, right? It's like, that's like, I don't care that they hear that, But I think on NWA. So.
I think the biggest thing, though, of what Tamice said is articulating the why. Because bigger than just dad being pissed is kids need to hear clear articulation why. It might even make sense to you, and you might think, I've told them why. I found often, especially in these matters, parents don't say why, and they assume kids know. And it's not enough to just be mad. We have to raise our kids with clear thoughts.
Yeah. Because
they're going to exist in the world with the rest of us. And I need your kids to know real actual thoughts, because they're gonna be big.
Yeah, definitely. I try to, living in HUD housing, you know what that is. It's like low income housing. I lived in that until I was 13, and that my dad, we didn't have anything. My parents were 18 and 19 when I was born, so we had no money at all. He worked his way out of it, but something occurred to me. I went back to my old neighborhood when I was 21 years old, 20 years ago. I'll never forget. I visited with my wife, and I looked around, and like some of the same families lived there. And something that occurred to me was their dads or their moms may have worked just as hard as my dad did. But because it was still the 80s at the time, he got an opportunity to move up a step that their parents may not have gotten. because I remember their parents worked hard too. And that was when I first started to realize what you talk about when you say white privilege. I'm like that. It was a clear situation where both people worked just as hard, and I try to, and I'm doing a lot of what you guys say, but it's still, friends come into play and they'll hear, matter of fact, my daughter, she made friends with one girl at school who has a black father and a white mother. And this girl, she's also a 90s girl, and she's very much like, like she got her friend got mad because all the white people were sad about Kobe Bryant dying. Because she's like, the white people don't have a right to be mad about that, like stuff. And my daughter's like, why does she feel that way? And I said, well, honey, it goes a lot deeper than that, and it's awesome. generating conversations, but it's there's still experiences that I had as a child that they'll just never have. I mean, there's stuff that I saw in homes.
Not unless you move back into that low income housing. I know. That's the thing. It's like, I lived in the same house for 13 years and you kind of get settled in and don't want to leave. But there's this inner battle of like, I don't want my kids to have to go through what I went through. Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, there's such a value
especially
in that. Especially
daughters. Yeah. It's scary.
But anyway, I appreciate you guys taking time to answer.
No, you're fine.
Thanks for jumping on, Chad. Appreciate you.
Chris asked, what is your guys' take on Black Israelites?
Oh.
That's probably the last question we're going to get into.
I wish I had a drink. I have thoughts.
You're right.
Okay.
I think
I'm just saying we're at Q&A. Like,
this is good. No, this is great.
Why not?
Okay.
Go, Rob.
Okay, so for those who are uninformed, Black Israelites, Tamice will have a more eloquent answer, I'm positive. So Black Hebrew Israelites, I became aware of them while I was in college because I had a Bible study and I was a very fresh convert and I was like very like, yeah. And there was a dude named Adonis and he came to Bible study and he always used to derail my Bible studies because he was real into the Old Testament and he would always ask these really hard questions. And I'm like, this seems really weird, but he was like very strong and like very like it was a lot, right? But I found out later that he was a Black Hebrew Israelite, but then I didn't, that was before Google because I'm kind of old. Like, don't let these beautiful looks fool you. And but later, anyways, all that to say, Black Hebrew Israelites, they have some very questionable beliefs, and they think that they are the center of a lot. My father has also, in prison, converted to Black Hebrew Israelites. Okay. So it's personal for me. So my thoughts, I have a ton of thoughts, but I would say, what I would say is what's sad to me is the why a lot of Black men specifically
gravitate towards
gravitate towards it, especially in prison.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like the Malcolm X thing.
Yeah, I think what's sad about it is it's an indictment against Christianity in America and against systemic racism. And because Black men have felt so disempowered by the type of Christianity that has been presented, they find no place for them in a Christianity that seems disempowered. They also find no place for them in society. But here is a form of religion that makes them feel the most empowered, strong, and able to oppress others. And so it's like, it's almost like if you've ever seen Dragon Ball Z, it's like they can go Super Saiyan. And so actually it's sad to me. And so for my already abusive father, it gives him
justification almost,
language, justification to be even more abusive than he already was. So sad to me.
Would you say that's probably
go ahead.
Pretty cult-like then? It sounds like, well, is there a defined leader at all of the group?
I don't know. Go to me. So what are your thoughts? Is there? I don't know.
So first, the thing about Black Hebrew Israelites is that it's not one thing.
Yes.
So I think that's where people get the most confused about it. There are pretty much three sects within that. There are Black Jews who basically have a Christological paradigm, and they also say that they are descendant from the original Hebrews. So they're not as problematic to me. It's just like, okay, they don't like white Jesus and they want to be special. The middle group is
That's a way to break it down. I'm sure they'll love that.
I know. I'm sorry if there are any Hebrew Israelites watching or listening. Love y'all.
But they'll let you know. Trust.
Yeah, they will. I mean, they think that we don't know the Bible. That's one thing. So they do. The funny thing is that the critique against them, the ones that have the Christological paradigm, is that they have their own interpretation of the Bible. And usually that's white evangelicals making that statement, which is funny because so do they. But I think the middle group is they're going to be the Black Hebrews, which they're just Black people who practice Judaism. And then the Black Israelites are like, we are the Jews of old. And so they follow a real strict form of Jewish tradition. And to me, they're not that problematic when you kind of break down that they're just trying to like Robert is saying, they're trying to make a way for themselves. And they're not problematic in the sense that like something they believe is super duper crazy. It's just more so they're real loud and real angry and real passionate.
Real loud. And I emphasize real loud.
Yeah. But I mean, a part of it is a desire to like see their people come out of the sunken place. Right. And I think that's kind of what's driving them. But like they're just Black people who want nothing to do with white Jesus and who don't want to eat pork. And they're different from Nation of Islam because they kind of embrace, they're a little bit more urban, I guess you could say. Like Nation of Islam is like an old great-great-grandfather of Hebrew Israelites. So that's kind of where they're at. And obviously Islam is Quran and Israelites is Torah. I mean, it's really not that. It's not that scary when you deal with them. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like when you study them.
No. But when the loud ones, though,
yeah,
when you disagree with them, what gets scary?
They get loud.
Is they get loud? Yeah. So you kind of underselling when you try and push back.
They're not going to be near anybody. I mean, they're not around here that much. They're mostly in the Northeast.
Yeah. So I'm like, don't undersell it. When they get loud,
fair enough.
That roaring lion.
Yeah, they will. They'll come for you.
Yeah, will bite your neck off.
You've been bamboozled.
Yeah, I'm like, yikes.
Well, guys, this was every bit as I want to say enjoyable because it was enjoyable, but at the same time, like this will be one of those episodes I'm looking forward to going back and listen to again because there was just a lot, and I caught myself, just like a deer in headlights almost, because I know everything you guys are saying is true, but I love the approach you guys take at it. With the intellectual and the empathetic. Like just you guys' posture sets up in a way that like makes it something that could be hard to swallow, way more palatable. And so I'm looking forward to the edit and the release of this because I will. It's special. It's special to be able to host it, having you guys on here because I feel like it's important work that you guys are doing. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us on. Seriously. It's enjoyable.